who's getting the first pick? Because I think we feel a little differently in certain ways about the first pick. Who
Washington's
wants
on
it?
the clock.
Washington's on the clock because Caleb is the only player locked in to a NFL draft team at this point. I feel like.
Why don't you go ahead? Why don't you go ahead and get us in?
Okay, well that sounds good. I think I'm gonna go and I'm gonna check this player, and it's kind of crazy if I go to rookies only. To me, it's kind of crazy that Marvin is above Caleb, and maybe that's a hot take. Maybe that's just because we as a community have a better feeling that Marvin is going to be a superstar than Caleb. Yeah. Obviously, the hit rate on outstanding wide receivers is better than the hit rate on outstanding quarterbacks, but to me, it's just really a ceiling versus ceiling thing. I think Marvin at his ceiling is, we've seen what a wide receiver tops out in terms of their value. But when you get these high level elite quarterbacks that have the potential to be top 3 overall pieces, I think you have to take your stab at it, especially if you're sitting at the 101, unless you're like the Bears and you manage to take advantage of some hapless sucker. You're probably having to rebuild, and you want to rebuild around a quarterback more than you want to rebuild around a wide receiver.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was 50-50 probably a few months ago, but as we were talking about pre-pod, it feels like the pundits, it feels like smokescreen season has kind of murkied up exactly where the line between Caleb and like Drake May and Jaden Daniels is, and then also the line between Marvin Harrison and Neighbors is. So I think you now, again, I was more 50-50 a few months ago, but I think you're right. You can build around a quarterback. Their ceiling is worth more. Their VORP, their value above replacements more. As much as I like Marvin Harrison, like, there's a lot more people who are willing to go punt wide receiver builds than there are punt QB builds, right? So I go with.
Let's see how far you get with a punt QB build. Like exactly. That's not going to take you very far in life, especially because and what I'll say, we're going to do, our format for this is going to be a 12-team start 11 superflex. So you're just going to have a lot more scarcity at the quarterback position than you're going to have at wide receiver position.
Agree, right. And you're like, let's say, I mean, again, we're all assuming that Marvin goes to, I mean, we can pretty much pencil in Caleb to the Bears, right? And we were talking about how having Keenan as your 1A, 1B type situation is just ridiculously strong. I mean, we're assuming that Marvin Harrison goes to the Cardinals, but somebody could make a strong push and get him. And you might not like the situation. So I feel like we're assuming Marvin Harrison's situation. I know we're assuming Caleb's, but Caleb's feels at least a little bit more secure in that position. And I think we're all assuming Marvin goes to the Cardinals. There could be a trade down, there could be a trade up, there could be a lot of different things. So again, I think his situation could be a little bit more fluid than we would like to believe. So I think Caleb is just much safer and really more valuable. So
yeah, I feel like the only thing that's saving Marvin's kind of floor in terms of his situation is there's a couple of wide receiver needy teams at that 4-5 spot between the Cardinals and the Chargers, and both of them are going to want to trade down and let someone overpay like a mofo to get JJ McCarthy, but both can't do that. So one of them is going to have to sit still and take the best wide receiver prospect in damn near a decade. So you feel good that he's going to be getting his
drafted in the top 5 probably.
He's going to be drafted in the top 5, and he's either going to go to Kyler Murray or Justin Herbert. And both of those situations, and both teams need a wide receiver desperately. So it feels like there's a floor to that.
I will say this. I will say that the Patriots also need a wide receiver very badly, and they've been known to do some very funny things.
That's the doom scenario. They just pass on a quarterback, they take a wide receiver, and you've got Jacoby Brissett, Marvin Harrison, Demario Douglas, and Ramondre, and that's really about it. And I think that's probably the doom scenario for him, where there is no good quarterback in the near future.
I think Brissett is just scary enough to make this situation like a reality in your head that could possibly happen. Like it, if Brissett was like if they had like like Marcus Mariota, if they signed him or they signed trying to think of a few names, but
Sam
like a
Darnold.
work yeah, well, yeah, right. Yeah. Or Mitchell Trubisky or somebody. Like I think Darnold is actually still a fairly interesting prospect. I don't think he's particularly good, but I think he still has some interesting aspects, especially him learning a Shanahan offense for the last year. But yeah, like I mean, if they had a slightly worse signing in terms of a backup quarterback, I would feel a lot better, but they didn't. So I think Brissett, what was it, the last 4 or 5 games? I think Howell came back, but Brissett for three, 4 games, something like that, made that offense look serviceable. Like um, Dotson was serviceable in that stretch. McLaurin was very good in that stretch, and so if he can do that for those wide receivers, just makes him good enough to make this situation kind of scary.
Again, more talking just the fact the floor of Marvin's situation feels higher than it probably should be for any generic wide receiver. I'm gonna assume
Agreed.
you're sitting at the 102. Are we gonna assume that Marvin is the locked in 102? I think that's probably
Oh
safe to
yeah,
say.
I'm excited if that happens. I might troll the first person a little bit and give him some jab, even though I think Caleb was probably the better pick. Um, because he's just that exciting. Like you see on every, um, Facebook message board, Reddit. You see all these different places. People are just super excited to get him. They're trading up to get him, and if you get a chance to draft him with the 102, be just as excited. It's a locked in scenario where it's going to be JJ, Chase, CD, um, Marvin Harrison, Neighbors if he goes to a really good situation. And Rye you can throw in there, and he's
Just
going to
as
be
the
in there for a
after,
long time.
just as the
So
afterthought, you're forsaking your
yeah.
boy that much. You're literally wearing his jersey.
Listen, listen. I mean, there's a difference between being the fourth overall pick and being a generational wide receiver than being,
The fourth
a
round
very
pick.
a fourth round pick who, yeah, who has been amazing and awesome and exceeded every expectation, but has um, some noted physical limitations to just what his ceiling could be. So,
That's fair. I think that's fair. Although
like I read this. No, go ahead. Sorry.
I'd probably take the one. I'd probably take Amon Ra over the 102. It's always tough because I think we've gotten to this. We're in the throes of the draft season where we see all these positives about these wide receivers and we're just like, okay,
Yeah.
they're good. Like we're seeing all these positives where their values up, and I think we kind of forget that these guys can just not work out. Like we haven't seen.
Oh yeah.
Like we think Marvin's going to be one of the next superstars in the league, and we're pretty damn sure of it. But you know what I know? I know Amon Ra is going to score 20 points per game next year. I know that.
That's very true. Here's something I read the other day. Like, there's only a certain number of wide receivers that can get you 200 or 250 yards a game. I'm not saying every game, but like, on that random spurt, like Amon Ra's not ever going to get you, 250 and 2 touchdowns. It's literally, functionally impossible with the weapons they have on that offense and how that offense is ran through their running backs. And so, like, Jamar is one of them, CD is one of them, JJ is one of them. Amon Ra is not one of those guys. He can't put up 50 fantasy points in a random game, which means something. I'm not saying that I wouldn't necessarily take him over the 102, but I think Marvin Harrison, if he does go to the Cardinals, could be one of those guys that can get you 250 and 2 or 3 touchdowns, which is unique.
No, that's 100% a function of basically you've got to have the long speed to go along with the verticality and that explosive that
Hmm.
route running. Where we didn't get to my dismay, we didn't get to see the combine measurables for Marvin. I based on I forget the reporter who or the draft analyst who does the freaks list. I think Dane Brugler does it, and I think
Hmm.
Marvin was at the top of his list as like one of the biggest like athletic freaks of the draft. I wish we could
Yeah.
have just seen that just so we can confirm that he's basically Julio Jones athletically. But
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet that he would have dropped a 4.35, and you'd have gotten that long speed to go with one of the best technicians in the
Mhm.
college ranks.